Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order, and Art Gentry will open the meeting with a prayer. Go ahead, Art.
Oh God, Almighty Father, we pray this day in thanksgiving for all you have given to us. We pray that your wisdom and guidance enter as a gift to all who lead us in these troubling times. We pray, Father, that more people will come to know your true message of love and mercy, and that your peace and love will prevail over all evil, including the evil of abortion and euthanasia. May Christ's words on the cross be also recognized as the representation of the destitute, the despondent, the poor, the sick, the lame, and the dying, so that we may never lead them to cry out in painful and lonely desperation, my God, why have you forsaken me? Our Lord said, whatsoever you do to the least of mine, that you do unto me. Therefore, Father, may all that we do in your gift of life to each of us be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Art. Okay, and our next step is to do a flag salute, and in this organization, we always have the oldest veteran present lead us in the flag salute. And Jim Hudson's not here tonight, so I don't know who that falls to. If you're a veteran over 75 years old, raise your hand. Okay, a veteran over 70. Okay, Art, I guess you get double duty here tonight. Art, lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, just to keep things interesting, we're going to sing My Country 'Tis of Thee. You should have a song sheet, or it should have been one offered to you. And I don't like to do solos. The song sheet has the blue for the guys and the pink for the girls. But you can sing quietly if you want, depending on how it goes. But you can sing quietly wherever you want. I'll start out here. My country is of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. All right. If you want to keep the song sheet, you're welcome to keep it. Some of them have the Battle Hymn of the Republic on the back as well. So, okay. The secretary does not have to read the minutes. We're in the modern age. If you want to see the minutes from the last meeting, just click on that link, and it's on the website. Brian, you did an excellent job on that last video. I like the way you cut it. I like the way you put it together. I like everything about it from beginning to end. So that's a very good one. Let's give Brian a hand. Yes. That's so much for the minutes. I do have a correction. It's not so much for the minutes, but at the bottom of the agenda, item L says that we have our next meeting in October. That's because I'm so in a hurry today, and I missed getting that last line there. That should go to February 28th. We have 10 meetings, for those of you that don't know. We have 10 meetings a year, January through October, and then since we're on the fourth Thursday of every month, it would automatically land on Thanksgiving. And so we don't obviously meet in November, and then at Christmas time, we're in the middle of the Christmas holiday season, so we take off for November and December. So we have 9 more meetings to go, and I got some interesting people already lined up. I think next month, we're going to have the new city commissioner that nobody knows yet because she didn't run, and so she's an unknown quantity, and I haven't met her, so I think that'd be a good one to start with. So, okay, so at this point, I'd like to invite Andy and John up to the front table here if you'd like. You grab a chair here somewhere near the flag. That little red box is where the voice is going into, so you might want to be equally located between that. And we have, Andy is the host of the morning show called The Voice of Reason. I think many of you listen to Andy in the morning on KQAM. He's also on KIUL and KGYN. He's on every weekday morning, right? You're not on Saturday or Sunday, right?
Not on the weekend.
Okay, so it's every weekday morning from 6 to 9. And then John Whitmer has a new show coming up. He's found a new talent. He's very good at it. I've listened several times now to his show on Sunday night between 7 and 9 p.m. And they're on competing stations, but these two guys are I think they're going to probably agree on a lot here tonight. So anyway, the talk what I want to hear from them, why did we lose the governor's seat? What happened here? You guys have you're like the doctor. You have your hand on the pulse of the patient, and the patient is the people of Kansas. What went wrong? And so I want to hear about that. I want to hear. Now, not everything went bad in the election. There's a few good races. A few of them that were pulled out at the last minute and that were saved. Let's talk about that too, and then let's spend perhaps even more time talking about what we're going to do in the future. And then you look down, down at item I under the new business. You guys might want to talk about that a bit. You know about Michael O'Donnell and the FBI thing. I think that's a travesty that's going on, and we'll talk about that with the new business. But I would love to get something in this legislative session so that we have a citizens review board, and I'm going to be talking to John more about how we can go about getting that. It wouldn't have to cost a lot of money. This could be volunteers, but we'll talk about that when the right time comes. So we'll take it away. Andy, I'm going to have you go first, talking about the past, and then I want John to go, and John, you go second on the election, the past, and then you just jump right into, you go first on where we take it from here, and then we end with Andy again. So does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Take it away, Andy.
Well, thanks. It's fun to be here. This is a really great event. I appreciate you guys doing this every month. This is really cool. This election was, I think, we had some moments of negativity, but I think we also did a lot of good stuff in this election as well. Outside of the governor's race, I mean, we won the Secretary of State. We won every other statewide election for Republicans, and even in the South Central Kansas delegation, unfortunately outside of John's seat, we actually went very far, a lot more conservative in a lot of our state seats. I mean, we won in the primary, we won a good 4 or 5 new seats from moderate Republicans to conservative, and in the general election we won some seats from Democrats to Republicans. So I mean, overall, I mean, we just talked with Ty Masterson, state senator, on the air last week, and I mean, we won close to 10 new Truth Caucus members in our state legislature. So overall, I think we did really well for the most part in our legislative session in our election. Governor's race, unfortunately, just didn't happen, whether it was the campaign styles, whether it was the candidate, whether it was the outreach. I have my personal opinions where I think that we just failed to energize the base. And I think that Chris Kobach, unfortunately, just thought the base was given when it wasn't, and he tried to do too much. I mean, for example, for the radio, Chris Kobach didn't do any type of outreach to any talk radio listeners, you know, for our station or for KNSS or anybody else. He was doing more trying to compete on the TV level with this people to win them over as opposed to energize the base, and I just think it backfired on him. I like Chris Kobach. I wish he would have been in there, and I think he got it on well as governor, but I just think the style that he did, I don't think was enough. I think that Trump coming here to him was enough to just win over every Republican, and he just assumed that was going to happen, unfortunately. So I think that played against us. But outside of that, now, I mean, we have the legislative session with a more conservative legislature for the most part, and we have a Democrat governor where we're going to see a heck of a lot of nothing. The crazy part is that right now the Democrats, for whatever reason, feel like they're more energized and empowered than everybody else. They see the national movement with Nancy Pelosi taking over the House. They see Governor Kelly coming in with the Democrats, and they feel like right now they somehow have more power than the Republicans when we have still a vast supermajority of Republicans in our state legislature. I mean, I've seen bills already of a 3-day waiting period to purchase guns in Kansas. I've seen the bill to try and repeal the law saying that our tax money cannot go towards hiring a lobbyist to try and advocate for gun control measures. I've seen them already try and propose the Medicaid expansion.
$15 minimum wage.
$15 an hour minimum wage that Jim Ward already tried to present on the Democrat side. I mean, there's some ridiculous bills that they're throwing out there thinking that they're empowered and energized more so than what they actually are. So between all that, I mean, the election wasn't a complete knock. And I mean, we can look at the federal level as well. I mean, we obviously maintained here in the 4th District with Congressman Estes, what I think is a fantastic job. We still won our Roger Marshall on the western side, which, you know, he's not the most conservative guy, but at least it's a Republican seat in there. And we won a huge seat with the 2nd district with maintaining it as a Republican with Steve Watkins. And that was a bloodbath with him being an unknown. That was one with Paul Davis being a staunch Democrat with a really big name that a lot of people knew around here. And I think that that was a huge victory for us. Unfortunately, we lost the 3rd district with Sharice Davids. And that one was, I think, one that, Kevin Yoder, I think that he maybe just tried to play the fence a little bit too much, went a little bit too moderate, and tried to play to the widening umbrella a little too much than he should have, instead of re-energizing, again, the Republican base. Instead, we got Sharice Davids, where they like to go down the categories of she is a woman, she's a lesbian, and she is a Native American. So we get to check off the nice little boxes, and we get to play the division that the progressives usually like to do. So we lost on that one, but I think that we can gain that back, and she can fall on her own sword, and, you know, she'll be out in a couple of years anyways. So, I mean, we took some hits, but I think that we can't put too much of a crazy negative light on it, because I think we won in some other seats as well. Yeah, that's what I got right now. I think we're in decent position to do some good stuff. I think at the federal level, we're going to see stagnation with, you know, the more Republican Senate, with the Democrat-run House. The Democrats obviously controlling a heck of a lot of power up there and feeling like they control more than they actually do. And between Donald Trump, that's going to not let that happen, in the Senate, that hopefully is going to actually show some spine here relatively soon, that we can actually do something productive at the federal level. And I think at the state level this year that we should look on the agenda and the goal of not moving backwards instead of actually looking to gain a whole lot. And if we can stay stagnant, then I'd be pretty happy with that. That's my spiel.
Let's see. So I can give you inside knowledge from both perspectives, both from working on my own campaign, but I was also the 4th District Field Director for the Kobach campaign. So I was on every conference call all through the general election. Was intimately familiar with the day-to-day operations. I have my own theories, but I also know why. I mean, we know why we lost. I'm pretty certain I know why we lost. So I can give you that insight, you know, if we want to have that conversation. And I'd almost rather answer questions, to be honest with you.
We'll be doing that.
You know, I think really what it comes down to, looking back, first off, she outspent us almost 3-1. Yeah.
And how did she get that much money?
She got that much money because big national money came in here. They saw how vulnerable it was. Sam, look, I love Sam Brownback. He's a great guy. He was a terrible governor because he wouldn't lead. He wouldn't lead. He had the bully pulpit. He lost the will to fight. And, you know, it's hard to take a stand. And when you do take a principled stand, some people don't like you for it. And then when you get beat up, that wears you down. And Sam got worn down. And so Sam was a burden on a lot of folks. I mean, that's how my opponent beat me. I got 10 mailers that came in the last 2 weeks. Andy was my campaign manager. He can tell you. In the last 2 weeks of our election, we got polling data saying that I was up by 30 points. And then they sent 12 mailers into my district in the last week, and I lost by 52 votes. 12 mailers. That's how they did it. And it was all Brownback.
Yeah, I was going to say the nature of the mailers was Brownback.
All Brownback. Yep. And, you know, it was historically low voter turnout in my House district. I had people who came up to me afterwards and said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I thought you were going to win, so I didn't bother to vote. It was rainy that day, and I was bringing in harvest, and I knew you were going to win. So we just didn't vote." 52 votes. And I heard that a lot. In my House district, which is arguably one of the most conservative districts in the state, certainly one of the most in Sedgwick County. And it is now represented by someone who is pro-choice, anti-Second Amendment, will vote for everything Laura Kelly wants, endorsed Laura Kelly in the general, endorsed James Thompson over Ron Estes in the general, and is basically a Democrat. So he will not match the constituents, but
he's open-minded.
Yes, he's more so than me, apparently. And he's Art's Art's one of his constituents. Why did Chris lose? We were outspent. Chris, a candidate has two jobs, and this is what I've worked on campaigns for almost 20 years prior to running. A candidate has two jobs: raise money, meet people. That's it. If you're not door knocking, walking in a parade, meeting people, shaking hands, kissing babies, you need to be raising money. Chris wouldn't do either.
You had some Republicans, though, that was campaigning for Laura Kelly on television.
Yeah,
That didn't help. But you know what? Those people weren't going to vote for us anyway.
Well, I would say though that had somewhat of an effect.
Some of them on the fence.
Yeah, well, and I think that had an effect, not for maybe the conservative base,
right,
but I think that had an effect on the general oversight of individuals who may not follow politics close, who may not follow it as intently as a lot of us do, and then they see in the news, oh yeah, look at this, we have Republican after Republican after Republican going in endorsing the Democrat because Chris Kobach's too extreme, yada, 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 and they may not know the platform of Chris Kobach, they not understand what the heck's going on, they just see, oh look at that, 12 Republicans just signed a deal to support the Democrat, maybe he's too crazy, maybe we need to go across the aisle here, and I think that did play to some degree for the non-informed voter.
Here's how you counter that. Those of us who know that Stephanie Clayton and Barbara Bollier, who switched to Democrats this year, we've all known they've been Democrats, they voted with the Democrats. Had Chris fundraised, the minute those folks came out with that endorsement, we'd have been on television pointing out what they were. Pointing out that Bill Graves was a Bill Graves is one of the most liberal Republicans that this state had seen. That Mike Hayden raised taxes, that Bill Graves was. So the problem was we gave them 4.5 weeks where we weren't on television because we didn't have money. So that was our problem. So yes, that was a factor, but we gave them dead air where she got to control the message. And that's why my opponent beat me, is because in that last week he put 12 mailers out there. We weren't expecting it.
We thought it was good.
And we weren't ready for it, and they snuck it in, and had I known, trust me, I could have put tons of mail. My opponent supports a 9-cent gas tax to fight climate change and global warming.
in an agricultural district.
In an ag district. If I'd sent that to your neighbors in Clearwater, you think they'd have voted for him? Heck no. Raise your gas tax by 10 cents in order to fight global warming.
Yeah.
But so this was our problem with Chris, with the Kobach campaign. We didn't have the funds in order to properly let people know, no, Chris isn't the crazy right wing that the media is portraying him as. Chris supports putting money in the classroom. He doesn't want to gut teacher pay. He doesn't want to take money out of it. He wants to put it where it belongs. But when the media is against you and she's pushing her narrative and we're not pushing a narrative, that's all they hear.
Okay, I think it's a good time to start the questions from the floor. If you have a question, raise your hand. And then if you've asked one, then please allow everybody else to ask at least one before you raise your hand for a second question. Art, go ahead.
Simple question. Then what you're saying about makeup our legislature.
Steve, if you think they're horrible, could you all speak up a little bit more than you?
I need a megaphone. Anyway, is the legislature made up enough that we would have a good veto override if we need it?
We're close, but I don't think so in either chamber. Even after gaining about 10 seats in the House, we still lost a couple up in the Johnson County, Shawnee County area. So I don't think we have quite enough, which is why I don't think we're going to see a whole lot happen. What I'd like to see with this legislature is to pass a lot of conservative bills in both chambers, get them on the desk of Laura Kelly, and then have her veto it to get her on the record to veto it. I mean, I was saying the day after the election is that what we need to do is by day number 1, have a bill out there already ready to go on her desk saying that we want to eliminate sales tax on food because she said on the campaign trail that sales tax on food was extremely high and it was the result of the failed Brownback stuff, and therefore she was going to take care of that. So now that she's in there and she's talking about balancing the budget and wants to take care of the people in Kansas, especially the lower income people, let's get her on the record to do so. She's not going to do it, and even if she vetoes it, we're not going to be able to override that veto, but at least get her on the record to say so. But no, it's more conservative, but we just don't have enough numbers to ram through stuff, let her veto, and then override that veto, which really scares me, because if we get through something like a Medicaid expansion that did pass in the legislature 2 years ago, we had Governor Brownback there to veto it as a safety net, and they didn't have enough numbers to override that veto. This year, if it does go through, and if they do have enough moderate Republicans to side with Democrats to make it happen, we don't have that safety net, and the governor will sign it, and we'll see it happen this year. I don't think that's going to happen, because thank God we have Dan Hawkins being the House Majority Leader that has focused on that for a long time, and I think that he's going to do a really good job stopping it. But we have to be vigilant on it, because I just saw in the last 2 days, I've seen 4 bills in both chambers proposed regarding health care to some degree. They tried to slip in some kind of bill about, they're going to try and slip it in some non-way where we don't even notice it's Medicaid expansion until it's actually on the floor, and we realize they tried to sneak it through under some other type of bill as an amendment, and it doesn't look like Medicaid expansion right on the surface. We actually have to read a little bit. So they're going to be sneaky, they're going to be tricky, and we have to be on our toes this year.
That's what they'll do. They'll try, because it won't be brought up in any committee. None of the appropriate committees will take it up. And if it does get introduced into a committee, when a bill is introduced in committee, what happens is it immediately goes to the speaker, and the speaker then assigns it to whatever committee he wants to assign it to. And he can assign it to a committee where he knows it's going to die and never be heard. So what they know they'll have to do is run it as an amendment on the House floor. And they're not entirely sure. You need 63 votes in the House, 21 in the Senate. They're not entirely sure they have 63 and 21. But if they do, the leadership in both chambers is prepared to do all kinds of maneuvering and tricks in order to stop any attempt. Because if it passes both chambers,
done.
She'll sign it. There's not enough. On the flip side, there aren't enough mods and Ds to get to 63 and 21 either, because most of your moderate Republicans saw what happened 2 years ago. There's a reason we picked up seats. It's because they voted for the largest tax increase in history, and 10 of them lost. If they do something like that again, more will lose. Like the federal windfall, it's not going to pass. If it does pass, Laura Kelly will probably veto it. Unfortunately, if she vetoes it, we can't override it. But the ones who vote against it, like the guy who took my seat, that'll be a knock, because that's a tax increase.
Sure. But I mean, there are other bills that we do need to be concerned about, as I mentioned. I mean, with the 3-day waiting period to purchase a firearm, illegal aliens to receive driver's licenses in Kansas, which you can imagine where that's going to go to say, oh, now you got a state ID, now we can get you registered to vote. And they're going to push that, which is already in committees. Now, will that go anywhere? Hopefully not. I don't think so. And then they're addressing, I think, in my opinion, really ridiculous things like trying to end daylight savings time and trying to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. I mean, they're focused on non-important issues when we have some serious stuff to actually address here. I mean, when Laura Kelly comes out and says she wants to separate the budget from the education budget and the rest of the general funds, which I think could be beneficial, because then we can really rub it in their face and show that half the budget's gone, because that's how much it takes for their plan for education. At the same time, they're going to see it and be like, we want to boost it up. But when they control the dialogue and the discussion, we can see how dangerous it is. I just saw before I got here, the story I'm going to talk about tomorrow is that they're going after Ron Reichman because he's cutting $200 million from the education finance when the courts ordered that we must increase the spending.
I'd vote for it.
Well, I'm sure that the majority of Republicans would, but they're already attacking it when that's not the case. And how can, if they're going after and so fearful of the cuts, why didn't we see a story like that during Brownback's time when they said he was cutting it and yet he wasn't? So, I mean, we got to stay on top of the media and the perception of what's going on right now, because they control the dialogue and they're giving out some hashtag fake news.
And it is interesting to see the coverage. So everyone's heard the phrase robbing from KDOT. You've heard that phrase, right? And they bashed, the media bashed, and the Democrats bashed Brownback for robbing from KDOT. So Laura Kelly's budget includes $200 million swept from KDOT, robbing from KDOT. The Capital Journal, the headline from it said, Laura Kelly preserves KDOT funding. Now what she's doing is she's taking she's robbing $200 million, but she's not robbing any more than what
She saved $100 million.
Collier did.
Yeah.
So she's only taking the same $200 million that he was going to take. So she didn't rob any more than he was going to rob. Therefore, she's preserving KDOT funding. And that was the headline. Laura Kelly preserves KDOT funding. She's still robbing from KDOT. But you see how they spun the headline?
I also find it entertaining that with this whole Capers debate and the pension plans, as they had criticized Brownback from stealing from Capers, from taking from Capers, or not properly funding the pensions, which Brownback, if I understand, and you were in there, I mean, you saw that he was making double payments trying to catch us back up from what Sebelius did. Now it's okay for her to think that we had this $900 million windfall somehow from what we see from the Trump tax cuts that they're not going to give us, that's sitting in there, plus the anticipated money coming in for the next few months, that we have $900 million that we can spend, we can increase our spending base, and then we can also borrow from Capers $145 million for the short-term savings, re-amortize it, send it back another 30 years, and get us close to $7 billion in debt that we're going to have to pay back because we want to backlog the Capers so much. While shortening the payments, along with missing a few payments, whatever, it's cool, which is the same thing that I thought they criticized Brownback for after he tried to clean up what Sebelius did, doing the exact same thing. So we have that fight on our hands as well.
That's crazy. But how can you hold our feet to the fire and let people know?
This is
we know the problems now. How are we going to solve it?
This is her proposal. The governor makes a budget proposal. The legislature actually
They say thank
passes
you.
the budget. You know, we did the same thing. Sam gave us a budget proposal, and very often we would say, "Oh, thank you very much," and do up our own. In all likelihood, that's exactly what's going to happen here. The problem is, when the legislature passes a budget, it's probably going to go to her office, and she's going to go, "Oh, thank you," and throw it out. Because it's not going to be spending anywhere near as much as what she wants. And it's not going to spend as where she wants to spend it. My prediction has always been, and I've talked to colleagues up there, you think the last session was the longest session in history? There's one word that everyone in that building is not willing to say, but they all expect: gridlock. Because there aren't enough moderates and Democrats to get to 63 and 21. And there are too many crazy people like me. There are too many conservatives, and none of them are willing to do what is going to have to happen. In order to pass something that Laura Kelly will sign, it would be so bad a conservative would lose their seat if they voted for it.
And here's what I think is going to happen, and this is where we come into play as the voters, as the constituents, to make the phone calls and really hold their feet to the fire and make those phone calls to our legislators, is because the same thing that happened last session, the year before that, it's going to go up to the very last week of the session, and we're going to still have the budget to pass for our 2-year budget cycle, and we're going to have our educational funding that we're going to have to figure out that's going to appease the courts and try and make everybody happy. And we're going to come down to it at the very end. We're going to try and block it. We're going to veto bills. We're going to not have them passed. We're going to come down to the last week, and we're probably going to go into a special session. The threat of the constitutional crisis is going to come out again. The threat of the schools are going to be barred and shut down because they don't have any money and we need to pass the budget is going to happen, even though that we're actually projected to spend the money for the next 2 or 3 years already for education. That's going to be a fear. The constitutional crisis is going to be a fear. And then we're going to throw something in last minute that's not going to make anybody happy. Everybody on both sides is going to complain about it, but they're going to say, we have no other time, we have no other way to do this, we got to pass it, and they're going to ram it through, and then we're going to, complain about it for the next year again until we can go in and try and fix it all over again.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is going to happen this year.
And I think the key that you have to do is you have to help support your representatives, who are the conservative House members that were just elected.
Stand their ground.
Because here's the key. If they hold their ground, Laura Kelly will be forced to be the one who will concede and actually take less than what she wants. Because if the conservatives will stand their ground, that's what will have to happen, or they will just sit in perpetual gridlock. Unless enough conservatives do what I did as a freshman and voted for a sales tax increase that I regret to this day. At least it was a sales tax, and we got a cut in income taxes, and it was only 0.3 of 1%, but it was still a tax increase.
Here's the upside.
But if they vote for a compromise, some of those new freshman conservatives will be out in 2 years.
Exactly, and we can't let that happen. We need to hold them and make sure that they stay strong, they don't cower. But here's the upside, is that too, we also have some leadership that kind of goes with the wind as well on both chambers. And right now, the wind is the fact that we're a little bit farther right in both chambers. We have Ron Reichman, who I don't know much about him other than he's decent, but he'll stick with the majority of the Republicans, and the majority of the Republicans are more conservative this year than they have been in the past, which is good. So he'll side with them and hopefully stand strong enough to actually stay with a conservative type of mentality for the legislation. On the other side, we have Susan Wagle, who's a very moderate and goes with the wind, I think, in just about whatever's going on, but with a more conservative legislature and her wanting to run for the Senate seat in 2020. Yeah. She's going to really want to make a statement the next 2 years as the president of the state Senate, because she's very conservative. She'll be very conservative because she's going to want to show that she has this record as a conservative to run for that seat. So that's going to help us in this session because she's not going to cower, she's going to stay firm, and she's going to try and come out with conservative legislation in the Senate as well. So that is going for us, and hopefully if we have both chambers that are working in that together, then we can at least say, you know what, this is the best you're going to get, Laura Kelly, you better accept it, or else we're not going to go anywhere this session, and we can go into a crisis, and you're going to have to cower. So if we stay strong, and we let our legislators know, and we let the leadership know that they have to stay strong, then Laura Kelly will have to bow down when push comes to shove and we play chicken, because both leaderships in both chambers are, we're going to have to make them stand firm on no matter what.
Let me ask a question for both of you then. Are there any issues that are on the forefront that you think this year would be a perfect year for? For example, an issue that might have some Democrat support and some Republican support, that this year might be the perfect year for that. Something that would be populist. I'm thinking fluoride reporting, letting people know what is in their water. We continue practically by the month, more and more information is coming out on the harms that fluoride is causing. It's a national health problem, and yet people don't even know what's in their water. And that has huge Democrat support. That's why when you look at the back of this Treasurer's report, which, by the way, I forgot to have that approved. On the back of the Treasurer's report, we divide out the non-designated fluoride funds from the designated fluoride funds, because so many of those people, there's actually more Democrat money in that Republican account than there are Republicans. It's a serious issue. So maybe this is the year to move on that. Then I'm thinking of Eric Weinstein, or are you guys, either of you, familiar with what we call it's not my name, it's called the intellectual dark web? Are you familiar with that term, either of you?
I've heard it.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that's Eric Weinstein and Jordan Peterson and some of these people. There are some very wise people that are discussing things, and Eric is a big-time Hillary supporter, and yet here he's all on fire saying that the FBI needs to have some oversight. Now, this is a big-time Democrat, and I'm saying, all you need to do is look at Trump's situation nationally, and the problem with the FBI is there's no checks and balances for them. They're sitting at the top, and there's no balance, and they should have an oversight committee or something that would look and say, there's got to be some limits to how far they can push things and what's going on.
That one is a federal one. The fluoride one, I
think we could get some stuff like that
think
done.
Now would be the time. I would reach out to, I think Joe Syward's still Energy and Environment, unless they moved that committee. I think they may have redone that, and it may be under Ag and Environment, in which case I can't remember who the chair is now. They've got a new chair, but I'd reach out to them but now's the time to do it if you want it, because the session just started. Once they get much into February,
It's
session
quite
runs
early,
quickly.
the deadline comes quite early in
Right,
the season.
so I would reach out to them now. And I would go to the chair of Ag and Environment or Energy Environment, whichever has environment in it, on the fluoride one. That's where I would go.
I would say that one that we could potentially see some movement on would be some transparency stuff as well. And I know that Republicans and Democrats both, Democrats especially the last few years under Brownback, wanted more transparency. They've both, and you can attest to this, I mean, both sides I think wanted to have, a lot of the audio or video feeds of different committee hearings to hear what's going on in them and really open it up. Now, at the same time, we do hear that right now Laura Kelly is trying to have her Medicaid counsel with the Medicaid expansion bill try and craft it behind closed doors. And luckily Dan Hawkins came out and said that we want transparency in that council as well to hear what's going on. And she may get that one because she doesn't want that. But I think that one thing that we could maybe see move forward is some more transparency stuff in the legislature to see what's going on up there. Maybe actually have the legislation to actually put the names of the crafter of the bill on the name of it rather than just the committee, and so we actually know who's voting for it, who actually passed it in the committee, and who's actually presenting this kind of stuff. So we could see some stuff happen that way.
That was added in their ruals. They
Good.
They did add that. So anyone who introduces a bill now, the name will be attached to the bill. The live streaming, that we passed that. That was Blake and I actually sponsored that 2 years ago. So now you have that in committees now as well.
So are all votes live streamed then, or
Everything but in committee.
Okay, but
So-
we still don't have the daily committee votes. We still are. Well,
I mean, I can
that's a
I
step
can
in the
tell
right
you
direction.
why. I can tell you why committee votes are not recorded. If you
Tell
wanna
us
know.
why, because that doesn't make any sense. To me.
So,
You
okay,
work
so
for
we're
me.
on a committee, and you're the chairman of the committee, okay? And I've got a bill that I really want to be heard. Just so that you know, chairmen have all the power.
Yes.
Bottom line, I want a bill heard in this committee. The only one who determines whether or not that bill gets a hearing is the chairman. If he doesn't want to have hearings for that bill, it'll never see the light of day. So we're working a bill, and he needs to get 15 votes out of this committee. There may be times, and I will tell you I have done this, where I have gone to my chair and I've said, Mr. Chairman, I need to get Bill A. I'd like to have a hearing for it. And he said, well, it's pretty controversial. I don't know if I want to really deal with it. I don't want to deal with that bill. I said, okay, Mr. Chairman, I don't like Bill B. And I'm not going to vote for Bill B. If it comes on the House floor, I'm voting no. But I will vote for Bill B to help you get it out of committee because I know it's important to you, if you will give my bill a hearing. Okay, John, I'll give your bill a hearing. That's why they don't want to do recorded votes in committee.
Exactly.
Because if I had to be on the record publicly voting for Bill B, I wouldn't have done it. Because I will not vote for Bill B, and when I have to do that recorded vote, I'm not voting for Bill B because it's a bad bill. But I will make that arrangement with my chairman in order to help him move that process along.
The fun game of politics.
Right, and that is unfortunate. That's why they call politics sausage making, because it is kind of ugly. But that is somewhat the situation, because it is all about working, you have to be able to work with others. And so that is why committee votes are often, now you know.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes sense.
And I've done it. Now, did I help that process? Did I help that? I could have killed the bill. Had I voted no, that bill would have stayed in committee.
Yeah, I know.
But
Now, the majority of those aren't usually the heavy hitter bills like,
No.
the tax, a budget bill or the education
No.
spending or anything like that.
this
So
was
it's kind of
this was a liquor bill.
Yeah.
But whatever. Okay.
Anybody else have a question out here?
I got a comment though.
Sure.
Stuff like that's the reason why we're in the shape we're in now.
Yep.
Exactly.
Oh, the process is
So don't do it.
the process is so, but unfortunately, that's the process that they have. It's like the bundling of bills, the way you know, that they bundle bills. They'll take 3 or 4 bills and they'll put them together. And half the reason they do that is because they want, there's 4 bills. And there's one bill that I really like, and there's one thing in there that I can't stand. But they're hoping that I'll vote for the whole thing because of the one. Now, what I've done on more than one occasion is I've said, nope, I'm voting no. And I will let the bill that, they did this to me my first year, a bill that I carried, I had to vote no on because they put it in with a poison pill.
So why doesn't somebody propose a bill that you can't bundle bills?
Right.
They do every year. It's called the Rubin's Rules, named after John Rubin, who was a state representative, and one of his rules was no more bundling. But, and one of the few times my first vote as a freshman was I voted for Rubin's Rules. And I remember Ray Merrick, the speaker at the time, got really mad at me because I was a freshman and I voted against
What he voted for.
I voted against the leadership's rules.
Right. You're supposed to just look at him and
But
vote no.
I liked Rubin's rules, which was record all votes, no bundling of bills, no working after midnight, you know, but I just felt like this was the wrong way to, because if this is a poison pill, later on I ended up having to vote against a good bill. But see, I also have another rule. I won't vote for any bill that doesn't have a pay-for built into it. You bring a bill to the floor and you don't have a way to pay for it, I vote no. I don't care if it's a good piece of, I don't care if it's the best piece of legislation. If you didn't provide a way to pay for it.
Yeah.
What's the justification behind bundling bills? Do they say they do that to save time?
Part of it is, at the end of session, what happens is, once you've gotten through that process, at a certain it's basically cutoff date, any bill that has not passed either chamber is dead and cannot be used. So you get to a point where you can no longer work any of these old bills. So we can't touch them, but you can use the bill number. So what they'll do is, okay, this bill's dead, but I can use that number, so I can take this and put it in here, and you use it as a vehicle. The only way to do that is to take this part of this bill, put it into this bill. But some of these other parts remain. The other way you do it is, frankly, we want to get that guy to vote for it, and that guy to vote for it, and that guy to vote for it. So the best way to do that is to put a little bit of this and a little bit of this in here, and now it's a combined bill, and the hope is that by combining all these components, we get votes. But there may be poison aspects in there that...
And that's when, you know, a month later, when we're working, we come home and we hear the news and, oh, this got passed and we had no idea about it. Why we're so frustrated and say, what the heck's our government doing? Because, you know, we didn't even know this was going on. We had no idea that they were talking about it, debating it. We had no idea this was happening. Oh, by the way, it just got passed and there's nothing we can do about it now. And then it's harder to repeal anything than it is to actually get it through. So, you know, that's, like you said, that's why we're so frustrated and why we're in a lot of situations that we are right now, because things get slipped through that we don't even pay attention to.
Yep. Oh, and there are some bills. Here's another one. Part of Rubin's rules was you can't bundle a bill that hasn't been heard in your chamber. But they will do that. They'll bring in a bill that was never heard in the House. So they often will bring in a bill that the House had never seen before. So you're asking me to vote for a bill I've never read, I've never seen. The House never had hearings on it. The Senate did, because it only has to have passed one chamber. So the Senate voted on it. It passed the Senate, but the House never voted on it, never had a hearing, but now I have to vote.
Okay, well, we're running out of time, and looks like we're running out of questions, which is good. I've got the last question for both of these gentlemen, and they're like totally, one has nothing to do with the other.
Michael,
but is there anybody else has a question? Go ahead, Art.
Just a real short one, and maybe to keep your answer short too. When you have a committee hearing and you have somebody testifying in that committee, which I did 2 years ago on something, it was just a one-page testimony. I only got about a fourth of the way through it, and they cut me off, and it went around, and I didn't get to finish the important points that I had there, even though they had the printed sheet in front of them. Why does that happen?
How many people were testifying? Was it a long, busy day?
2.
What committee?
Had to do with notary public laws. So I don't know whether that was in the finance.
Depends on the chair, how busy they are.
I was extremely disappointed that I made the drive up there, my wife and I did, and got that shut down. I won't be back up for another testimony.
It depends on the chairman, I mean, and how busy they are, what kind of time constraints they're under. That if you wrote out their testimony, I will tell you that most representatives will read all the testimony.
I did write it out, yeah.
And that's why we have you, that's why everyone is required to write your testimony out and submit it in writing. Because sometimes if you have, you know, you're on a time crunch, and that may be why.
Okay. If nobody else has a question, I've got the last question for both these gentlemen. For Andy, and this just came up because you mentioned it, daylight savings time. Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? Or is that one of these things that we get Republicans and Democrats to go together on? Should it be replaced or should we keep it? What you know, tell us about that.
Well,
and then for John, as soon as he's finished with the daylight savings time thing, this is more in relation to your working with the Kobach campaign. Just as Brownback would have lost if he didn't take our advice and do some pro-life advertising during the last 8 days of his campaign, he would have lost. And Kobach was running the same way. We had 2 people that volunteer on site at an abortion facility in Wichita, made the statement or words alluding to the fact that they believed that Laura Kelly was pro-life. One said, well, at least they're both pro-life. I'm saying, like, where does that come from? You know, I said, that's totally wrong. Where'd you? Well, I heard it at church. Then I said, it's probably a Catholic church, right? He said, no, I go to, you know, whatever Protestant church. And so what in the world, John? I tried to call. I mean, I'm not blaming you personally. What happened in the Kobach campaign that they didn't at least attack Laura Kelly for being pro-choice? And I mean, I saw this thing coming. And when I have somebody on site that's that pro-life, I mean, they are plugged into the pro-life movement, and they think that she's pro-life, and they're going to vote for Laura Kelly. There's something wrong here. I mean, you can't just take the pro-life vote for granted. I'm surprised that they didn't have ads on your radio. I mean, that's worse than I thought. I didn't know they were that short.
Want trade?
Go ahead.
National, I did Channel 12 on an issue a while back, about the election of the Catholic Church Senate, but their source was the National Catholic Reporter, and that is not a representation of the doctrine.
True.
of the Catholic Church.
I agree. That's a horrible magazine.
I jumped on.
A horrible publication. Shouldn't get it. Or don't.
You got the first one. You got
all right.
daylight savings.
Well, I'll do that, and I'll briefly comment a little bit on that. He could probably go a little bit deeper on that from Kobach's stance. But first off, with daylight savings, I think that I think it's a silly argument. I don't really care. I don't think that we should be focused on that. I think that's a waste of time for the legislature to be focused on. Personally, I don't mind daylight savings time, and I don't mind the time switch. I did a poll actually on the air with my listeners, and it actually came out about 50-50 for people that either wanted to keep the change of times or keep it on the daylight savings year round and during the summertime instead of going back to it during the wintertime where it's actually, you know, so they actually want to keep it on the daylight savings. But it was about 50-50 people that actually cared one way or the other. I think it's a waste of time for us to pay attention to. And unless the federal government does it nationwide, to have one state do it and another state not, I think makes it more confusing. I grew up in Ohio where we practiced daylight savings and flipped the times during the summer and the winter. But Indiana, which we lived right on that border about 10 miles from Indiana, they didn't do that. So depending on what time of the year was what time we actually went over to the family that lived across the border in Indiana, and it was a pain in the butt. So I think it's a dumb issue. I don't really care for it. I think it's a non-issue that we shouldn't really focus on, but they apparently made it a big deal. So
I agree. It just doesn't rise to the level of, you know, we
got bigger fish to fry. Exactly.
It's such an annoying, stupid thing that I just wish it would go away. And I think that you'd have as many Republicans as Democrats.
Yeah.
I would be interested if you had any more information on your poll as to like who voted which way. Was there a partisan shift?
No, it was. I mean, it was predominantly, you know, the Republicans that usually kind of call into the show, and I had about 30 people, both on social media and during the show for the hour that I talked about it, call in and social media and message me and everything, and it was right down the line, 50-50, with people that either they wanted to keep as is with the time change, or if they didn't want it to change, they wanted to keep it on the daylight savings year round, and they don't like the wintertime
Yeah, but
times.
see, that just proves that they don't like daylight savings time. If you're
Yeah.
gonna say all year round, well then
They want it-
businesses should have the option. Okay, we'll open at 9 instead of at 8 or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, they could shift it themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
So-
But yeah, they wanted to keep it on the summertime rather than the non-daylight savings time. Technically, that is the winter time. So
Right.
so it was weird. But yeah, it was actually right down the line, 50-50 of who wanted to actually address that or not. So I thought it was kind of interesting. Real quick, before John gets into the issue, I mean, with the pro-life, I know that Laura Kelly already signed an executive order to repeal a little bit of the pro-life stuff that we've been able to put in place with Brownback, which is concerning, and I'm hoping nothing goes through the legislature. I don't think it will this year. I think outside of Laura Kelly's sole power with executive orders, I don't think we're going to see any other rights move in the wrong direction on the pro-life issues, which is a good thing. But, for the ones who think that Laura Kelly is pro-life, it would have been nice to, as she's the one that says that we need to have bipartisanship, and she's going to listen to both sides, and she's going to have Republicans and Democrats on her committees and councils and hearings and her cabinet. She showed up to the Women's March last week and made a representation there, but couldn't show up to the pro-life movement, the March for Life last weekend, and speak. That had almost 1,000 people there.
But she closed the Capitol.
But she closed it down halfway through it, so which has never happened before.
Must have heard it in the Catholic Church.
As far as the person, many people think that the only people that take a shift at the gate of the abortion clinic. I run the Kansas Coalition for Life as well, and the volunteers hand out literature to the abortion-bound mothers in hopes that they will read the literature and change their mind and allow us to help them financially to keep the baby so they don't have to go through an abortion. Many people think that that's 100% Catholic. The truth is it's about 50-50. We have as many Protestants as we have Catholics helping out there, and so that's where that comes from. It's not all Catholics out there, and this happened to be a Protestant person.
That's not.
Pardon me?
They probably heard that in a Catholic.
That Laura Kelly was pro-life.
Oh yeah, there's many of the
I've been a Catholic for 68 years, and I know.
I'm Catholic too, but there are many Catholics. Fortunately, we have a pretty good bishop now. There's many Catholics in this nation that are almost adopted into the Democrat Party. There's many of our leaders.
Never was one here in Wichita.
No, Wichita's been conservative. I agree. I agree, but there still is pockets of very liberal Catholics that are supportive of abortion, supportive of Planned Parenthood, supportive of all of the wrong causes, and that's.
Well, Nancy Pelosi's a Catholic. I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. So is Kennedy.
I can tell you, I spoke to the chair actually of the committee that's got that daylight savings bill, and that's in a drawer. So that's dead on arrival. So again, power of a chairman. That goes in a drawer and never goes anywhere. So to answer your question, we tried to get Chris to.
Was it Chris's decision or was it someone?
It was Chris's decision.
Well, that's just so disappointing.
And that was part of the problem.
Wait, his stance on it?
No, that Chris was making too many of the decisions.
Oh.
I understand being short of money, and I didn't know he was that short of money. He said
You're very short of money.
it was 3-1.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty
Holy
much.
smokes!
She walked in when they first started the general election. She walked in with like $1.5 million more than what he did right off the gate. Right out of the
I
gate.
knew she was doing really good on fundraising along the way.
Yeah, they started off the general election. Now it didn't help that we had like a week or two of trying to close out the primary race as well. But yeah, I mean, she walked into the race in the general funds right about $1 million more than he did right out of the gate for the general election.
They had us about 3-1 on fundraising. And Chris, don't get me wrong, Chris. It wasn't that Chris chose not to do, pro-life advertising. It's just
Well, if
he
did
chose
pro-life,
to spend.
if Chris did,
He had
pro-life
limited funds
advertising,
available, and that's.
If Chris did any pro-life advertising, it all got past me.
No, he didn't.
Where? Show me the station.
We
show
didn't.
Show me the print ad.
We didn't. We just didn't have.
This is the problem, guys. And I was telling you that when there was time to correct it.
No money.
It's
No money.
passed.
Well, and I think that it was, the bad marketing anyways. I mean, the last 3-4 weeks when they did, even with the TV ads, it wasn't issue driven.
Nope.
It wasn't saying we support the Second Amendment, we support the pro-life movement, we support the conservative values, we support funding education. It was, hey, Donald Trump came to Kansas to support me, and therefore you need to vote for me.
Well, and those ads were from the NRSC.
Yeah, and I was so frustrated with seeing his the little bit that he did try and get his name out there for his messaging. That last bit, it wasn't issue driven. It almost seemed like it was a panic.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like it was a panic of, oh, hey, Donald Trump came out here, so therefore you need to vote for me. Not I support this, this, and this, and this is why you need to vote for me.
And those ads were from the National Republican gubernatorial campaign, and that's all they could run.
Well,
You had a question on O'Donnell. I'd love to get to it real quick.
yeah.
What was
Okay.
your-
That's actually item I. That's what I'm trying to get to
Okay.
right here. Okay. So. Let's give John and Andy a big round of applause. Appreciate them being here. Appreciate their knowledge. I think both of them do an outstanding job. I'd recommend you guys listening to their program.
Please do.
Yeah,
We're both employed. Well, I mean, we have a small business, but
Yeah. Well,
we
nevertheless,
need listeners. So
well,
tune in.
They're putting on a quality program. It's something worth listening to, and I certainly do every chance I get. I inadvertently skipped item E on the agenda, the treasurer's report. That needs to be approved. On the back side, I want to, again, apologize. I could have taken care of this with Brian up front. On the treasurer's report, if you look on expenses, we normally see Brian Koss halfway down there should have his $100.
I was super late and I actually cashed that today.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, all right, so that answers that question. Do we have any questions about the treasurer's report as printed? Yes.
That credit card processing fee for 4 months, $469, that's almost $115 a month. Given our overall budget, that's a big chunk of money.
It's terrible, and part of that is that we're getting an extra fee for being non-compliant, and the non-compliant thing, I'm working on that. I am compliant for credit cards with everything having to do with the Kansas Coalition for Life. I've got that all up, and it's very hard these days to be a credit card processor, a merchant. And I'm doing everything I can to get our compliance certificate. And my apologies. If you're good at that, I could use some help on it. Most people have accountants doing this. I'm really spreading myself too thin. That's part of the cost there. But it's just so costly anyway. And the question would be, would we be better off without credit cards entirely?
That's what I thought. If that's 40, that's a quarter or a fifth.
Well, I agree, but the only problem is that sometimes when you have, if you got nothing going on, then you're probably better off not to have them. To become a credit card merchant is extremely hard. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? I mean, if you're going to open a business, anybody has a business, I mean, you're going to have a very hard time becoming a merchant in the first place. They're going to want to look through your entire computer, make sure you're not saving any credit card numbers. It's so hard to get on. The reason that I keep them is because when we have a campaign, when we have some push, when we're doing something that we need to raise $10,000 for, like we did to beat the fluoride thing, 95% of that money came in by credit card. And so this, I know it looks like a lot of money here compared to what we're spending elsewhere, but we took in $10,000 inside of a few months, all of it by credit card, and yet the fees were still the same. You have your monthly fee. Actually, depending on how you're set up, they could be the same, or they could be a flat rate fee for the month and then a percentage on every sale too. So, but look, if this organization decided we're not going to do anything, we're not going to have a big push for anything. Let's say I didn't have item I, which I'm about to talk to in a minute here. If we take any money in on that, it's going to have to come in by credit card. You can't call people and raise money
and say, well, put a letter in the mail, and you know, they don't even carry stamps anymore. People don't use US mail. Almost all money transfer is done by credit card. So either we stay in the game or we get out. But I couldn't agree more that that's outrageous that we pay that much.
Mind if I make a suggestion?
Yes.
We do $300,000 a year in online sales. That's all we do. Square and PayPal. That's my recommendation.
Well,
get a PayPal account, use Square, get rid of your credit card processing. Let them collect a 3% charge from your customer.
I suppose there's a way to do that. I've had bad, I'm not going to say bad, I had difficult experience with not with Square. I haven't tried them yet, but with PayPal, many people don't want to pay that way. Some will. Some will pay with their credit card on PayPal, but if they don't have a PayPal account...
You don't have to anymore.
Okay, anymore?
Nope.
Okay, so maybe things have changed a bit, but...
That's, I mean, that would be my recommendation, and then you don't have to deal with merchant service.
Certainly something we'll look at.
Yeah, I mean, you can get like a little card swiper that pops into your microphone.
That's the Square thing?
And, no, I mean with...
PayPal has them too.
With PayPal. And you just swipe the card like a credit card, goes to the PayPal account.
Yep.
So, well, maybe that's the way we should do it then.
And on Square, like, they don't even know they're paying through that. You just ask for their number and you type it in, and it takes a 3% fee or something like that.
The only couple of things we would have to have is we have to have the ability to take the donation by phone. That's the way it works. I mean, you know, people are mad about something and they're ready to donate. They're going to get on the phone, they're going to call you and say, here's my card number, you know, you better be able to run that. If you can't run that, and you can't go say, well, I'll run it on the Coalition for Life account and then switch the money over. That doesn't work. Number one, that's illegal. Number two, because of the fees and everything, you'd have to go through there, and you just flat can't do that. And so you either, like I said before, you either have to be in the game or out of the game. You got to be able to take that card number when you get the donation. And so it's because of what I'm planning for the future that we keep it. So I want to at least be able to keep it. If we're doing it through the Square or however, fine. I just got to be able to convert. Somebody gives me some numbers over the phone, I got to be able to get some money in the bank. That's all I care about. If I can figure out a cheaper, better way to do it, man, I want your help. I want you to help me do it. So, okay, that being said, can we approve the treasurer's report as printed? It balances to the penny. Art is making a motion. Do we have a seconding the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Now we're down to item I. As I alluded to earlier, I'm a person that by accident stumbled onto the intellectual dark web. And I almost, you know, it's just, who in here has heard of Jordan Peterson? Okay, 1, 2, okay, wow. What a guy. Jordan Peterson, he's a professor in Toronto, Canada, at a college, and he's in psychology, what his background is. But this guy is so incredibly smart. He's like an Einstein, only on today's problems and what's going on today. If you were at, I go to church at the Wichita State University Newman Center, and it's actually called St. Paul's Parish now. They dropped the Newman name from that, so it's called St. Paul's Parish. But the priest there, he had a whole sermon on Jordan Peterson. I said, wow, you know, at least this guy's listening to the right people. Now, Jordan Peterson's not Catholic, but he has such a good moral compass, and I can't say enough good about him. I think Jordan Peterson is somebody you should go. Google just Jordan, like the Jordan River, Peterson, like Peter's son, Peterson, and just bring it up. And there's a reason why he's breaking all records. I mean, you talk about something going viral. This guy is like viral on steroids. It's just like crazy where he's gone from being almost an unknown 3 or 4 years ago to right now he can't go anywhere in the world without people congratulating him for making their life better or for helping them in one way or another. Jordan Peterson has started, or he's trying to start, an online university. He's got lots of ideas about education and so on, and he's just so level-headed. You can't really say he's conservative, and you can't say he's liberal. All he does is looks for the truth. And I like people who look for the truth. I'm more a truth looker than I am a Republican. If I think the Republicans are wrong about something, I'll stand on the other side. But nevertheless, I think we all should be looking for the truth. So there's this. He has a person that he interviewed, and they actually interviewed Jordan Peterson, and it's Eric and Brett Weinstein, like Einstein, only Weinstein, and the Weinsteins are both very liberal, and both of them were supporters of Hillary Clinton, and yet because of something that happened, I won't go into all that happened at Evergreen College in Oregon, Eric Weinstein and his brother, they see the problems with the FBI. Now, John, a minute ago you said that's going to be a federal issue. It is, but it's also a state issue, and here's why. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, they are in every state, and we can't live without them. In this day and age, we would have had a hole in the ground where Mid-Continent Airport is over here. What, just 2 years ago, this guy that was ready to blow up, and fortunately the FBI was there and they stopped that. So don't get me wrong, we have to have the FBI. But what we don't want is situations like we got with Michael O'Donnell now. Michael O'Donnell is being punished by the FBI because he embarrassed them. Now, how did he embarrass them? Well, he embarrassed them by giving me information. So this gets into a tangled up situation. Many of you have heard about the situation with my house on Mosley and why the city wouldn't pay for that, because I kept a truth truck parked in the driveway, and none of the neighbors minded. They were all pro-life and they were all my friends. They would guard the thing for me. Nobody in that whole Riverside Edition area there, nobody complained. I knew them all because I'd go knock on doors, for precinct committee men and so on. But there was people that would drive by on 55th Street that didn't want the truck there. They would call somebody in the city council, the mayor, and Jim Skelton was my councilman, and he said, we're not going to pay for the damage we did to your house when they built the bridge, it damaged my house, and they wouldn't pay for it unless I moved the truck truck. Well, one thing has nothing to do with the other. If you damage something, you got to pay for it, right? Well, it goes from bad to worse. It started out the city and Donlinger were conspiring against the taxpayers to cheat the taxpayers out of some money. And that's a story for another day, but trust me, it happened. Believe it or not, the city of Wichita is corrupt. Okay, so I go to the FBI with it. I said, look at here, I can prove that the city of Wichita knowingly paid Donlinger for drilling holes for some piles that they drove instead of, and for concrete that they didn't buy, and they cut corners, and we paid for it, and we've got a substandard bridge. We're talking millions of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of dollars anyway, and the FBI knew it. I gave them the information. I said, here's the video of what they're doing, here's this, they had all that. Well, they didn't do anything about it. So I went back to them after a few months' time when the city was being more and more obstinate, and after this story goes back like 12 years. So long story short, Michael O'Donnell gets onto the city council, and he looks into it and he said, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. He said, this happens in third world countries. He said, this shouldn't happen to you. I know what's going on. And he gave me some paper. What I didn't have is the paper that showed where the city of Wichita paid Donlinger for work that they knew Donlinger did not do. And so then I took that to the FBI. And Michael O'Donnell told me to. I said, I've been there twice. What am I going to do? So the third time I went to the FBI, they were pissed off at me. They said, why are you here? And I said, I'm here because Michael O'Donnell sent me here. And I said, and here's the paper showing that we've paid our federal, state, and city money to Donlinger for work that they didn't do. And now what they did is they damaged my house instead, and the city won't pay that because I keep a truth truck with abortion pictures in my driveway. What a tangled up mess. One has nothing to do with the other, and yet the FBI is siding with Jim Skelton. And all they would say to me is, look, you have a way that you can get your house paid for, right? You have a way out, right? I'm saying, like, what does that have to do with it? You have a job. This is federal, state, and local money being corruptly spent, paid to somebody that is giving donations to the city council members, and it's a total corruption. And the FBI sits there and does nothing on it because they're siding with Jim Skelton and did not want the truth truck there either. You know, back then it was an Operation Rescue truth truck. Now we own it. And I know people hate the thing. I hate it. But it stops women from having abortion. We save lives with it. So here we got back to the intellectual dark web. So here we've got the Weinstein brothers talking about this bad situation at Evergreen College and talking about the various reasons why the FBI, it goes back to what, I think it's Lord Acton, if I'm saying his name right, A-C-T-O-N, Lord Acton. Anybody ever hear of that name before? Okay, he said, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Very, very wise Englishman. I think in the 1800s he said that. That is so true. The FBI, there is nobody above them. Can I go to the county sheriff and say, look, I can prove to you because Michael O'Donnell gave me the papers that, and the city was mad at him for giving me those papers to show me that they had knowingly dealt in corruption with Donlinger, only because Donlinger rewards them so well with their campaign contributions. Out and out blatant corruption, and the FBI is going along with it. And I can't go to the city, to the sheriff and say, go get the FBI. He says, they're above me, I can't touch them. I can't go to the county, the sheriff, I can't go to the police officers, or let's say to the chief of police, and say, look, we've got corruption here. Now, it's already in the hands of the FBI, we're not going to touch it. I've been there, I'm doing this, I've been dealing with this thing for 12 years. So, I'm in agreement with this. I don't care if Eric and Brett Weinstein supported Hillary. I am 100% in agreement with them that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that we need to have a place for a citizen. Where does a citizen go right now? If you've been wronged and the FBI is part of wronging you, like myself and Michael O'Donnell, who's being punished for helping me, Michael O'Donnell's being accused right now of, he was supposed to have stolen money from himself. And they got him for bank fraud. They got him for mail fraud because, you know, he put a stamp on the envelope and mailed it to the Governmental Ethics Commission. And they're just coming down so hard on him, they're going to put the guy away for 10 years in jail because they're pissed off at him for embarrassing the FBI by giving me the information that showed and proved that they are in cahoots, the FBI themselves are in cahoots with the city council and the Democrats on the city council and the Democrats in city government in having this corruption go forward, all for the noble cause of trying to get rid of a truth truck and protecting Donlinger Construction, because Donlinger Construction gives campaign donations like nobody else's business. We don't need that. That's third world stuff, and we need to have somewhere where citizens can go and say, the FBI did me wrong. I've got nowhere to go right now.
Well, Mark, President Trump, being president, can't prevent the FBI from being corrupt against him. What do you think chance you've got?
None.
Like your airport thing, how much the FBI targets groups of people it doesn't like and inserts agent provocateurs to create a crime.
Well, I know, but this is why we need to have at least a volunteer. What I'm thinking is maybe one person per county appointed by, you know, maybe the county commissioner in each county. That would be 105 people in Kansas. And they could meet once a year. And they could hear complaints from the citizens. Maybe there's no complaints. They go home. And they could be, you know, on voluntary basis or on some penny ante, you know, like John says, you got to pay for anything. You want to come up with something new, you're going to have to pay for it. I know that with the fluoride work. You can't, you know, if anything's going to cost any money, you better first say, okay, here's where we're going to get the money to do it. But we could have a citizens review board, that answers to a national review board. So it would have to be two levels, at the state level and at the national level. Now, nobody in Washington, D.C. is going to care about a bridge on 55th Street South. They're not going to care that Don Linger Construction was paid about twice as much money for that bridge as they should have been paid for. They don't care that there's a substandard bridge that people are driving over that could be like what you saw on the videos when Missouri was flooding, and they had, you know, these houses, you know, in the river, and they come and they push a bridge out, and the bridge becomes like a dam, and then the bridge gives way. Well, that's a bridge waiting for that to happen because it's not anchored very solidly. So, you know, you've got corruption here, and where do we go? Yeah,
I
question.
want to know what they think about it.
I do too. I'm done talking. You guys talk.
It's a good question.
Good question.
It's I mean, I think it's.
I've heard other people done the same thing, and they give them a little slap on the hand, maybe a little fine. Why do they keep after him?
But you talking about why they're after Michael?
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately, I think they think that Michael O'Donnell has information. They're after the Stevens brothers.
Yeah, right, that's what I.
And they think Michael has information, and they wanted to get it. And I've talked to Michael, so I have. I mean, you know, we're friends, so I can't really. That's what I think.
I like.
They keep putting it off.
I do too.
They keep delaying it. My guess is it'll never go to trial. They will come out with some sort of a slap on the wrist, pay a fine, probation, maybe even not diversion, and it goes away, and he never does squat and never gets convicted, and that's my guess. Because the bottom line is, and I will tell you, there's not a single campaign that has not been cited for an ethics violation. My campaign, we've always had, well, no, once, I think one cycle we didn't, but you always get a letter from Kansas Governmental Ethics informing you of something. You misfiled something. So-and-so didn't, you need to refile this Form A to Form B. And it happens because the system is so convoluted. And usually what you do is you, sorry, and you resubmit the form. Or you received a donation and they gave you excess, or they gave you 1 day after the deadline, so you have to refund it, and then they have to cut you a new check. And all it is you correct it, and okay, no problem. It's all Kansas governmental ethics. There's nothing criminal here. For some strange reason, the FBI has chosen to insert themselves into a Kansas governmental ethics function that has no criminal element to it whatsoever. But because there was a mail component, it makes it a federal crime. So they're just trying to use it to leverage.
And his email is because his email
interstate,
bounces,
right?
Yeah,
now
his email bounces from Wichita to Houston to
right.
Chicago.
So now it's
wherever.
interstate. This is
And
all.
and that's what allows the FBI to be in on it in the first place.
And it's all. They have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars
That's weak.
prosecuting a crime of less than $2,000.
Oh, I heard it was money laundering. Is that not true?
Sure, technically.
That's
The news
believe me,
But,
what John
but
just
you
said
know
is
what
correct.
he's actually technically being charged with is money laundering money that he actually gave to himself through, but he didn't because he's provided receipts for all of it.
Oh my gosh.
They're just after
It's-
him. That's unfair
Right.
what they're doing to him.
So the whole thing, my guess is, in the end, nothing comes up.
Art has something.
That's
We
fine.
got to close here.
Recently, the Federal Election Commission is allowing candidates to use campaign funds for daycare for their kids.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean, that was just not too long ago.
if you want to have fun sometime, go to the Secretary of State's office. It's all public record. Go to the Secretary of State's office and pull up campaign finance reports. If you've never done this, it's actually fascinating to do. Go look at a campaign finance report for folks. For example, you can look at mine, and candidates can write up anything they want. You can expense anything you want. Now, I, for example, paid Andy as my campaign manager. Andy, how much did I pay you?
$500 a month.
I gave him $500 a month. That's what he made. Now, he He was worth more, but that's all I could afford.
I don't know what kind of jinxed you though.
Some candidates, of course, we did lose, so technically, you know, that was not money well spent. But seriously, some candidates will hire their spouse and pay them. Now, do we know that the candidate is actually? Some candidates will do daycare. Some candidates will hire their kids. Some candidates will do their nails because I had to have my nails done. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can put on there. Mine, it's literally mail, the website, mailings, email. But if you look at what they pay for and write that off as campaign expenses, you'll be shocked at the stuff they try and get away with.
What John has said in the last 10, 15 minutes here is golden. Everything he said, I agree with.
But you have to go look.
So
the other thing to look at is
Couldn't
who
agree with you more.
donates. Because that's another fascinating thing, is to see who's
Brian, go
giving
ahead.
to candidates.
And I'll be super fast.
Go ahead.
One, I've heard arguments that perhaps we should get rid of the FBI because of
No.
a lot of its functions are actually redundant and taken care of. Those same functions are taken care of by other government agencies too. Do we want to put a vote as far as looking for the cheaper credit card payment alternative to look into that?
If you have time to look into that, go for it. You know, it was hard for me to get this far. I didn't know that we would be this far along without taking in a lot of credit card money and then still not being able to process and then becoming PCI non-compliant. I assumed, stupid me, I've been PCI compliant for the Kansas Coalition for Life since about maybe 2004 or so. Now, why wouldn't, I'm using the same computer, I'm using the same equipment, the same phone system, same everything. Why would I be non-PCI compliant for the same credit cards, sometimes from the same people? Running it through money to go to the KRA versus the Kansas Coalition for Life. Over here I'm PCI compliant, but over here I'm not. Tell me why. So,
Let me know.
I don't. It's just a matter of time and doing it, and probably ending up hiring an attorney to get it done. That's or at least an accountant, because I'm trying to do too many things at once. But anyway, if you want to look into that further, go ahead.
I guess I'm asking, is this something that we just look into and look later?
Yeah, how about you and I talking about a week, because I'm close to hopefully breaking this and getting it through, and getting it on the website, or at least it wouldn't be so bad if we could take the money in.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. So anyway, it's a bad position to be in.
All right.
So, but let's talk. We don't, you know, I mean, and we'll report. Well, everybody can know what we're doing. But bad situation on that, 100%. So, okay. Anything else, Brian?
I'm done.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that seeing what time it is, we don't have any choice but to adjourn.
Well, and somebody gets up at like freaking 4
I
in the
have
morning.
to make a few announcements here. The Wichita Pachyderm meets, everybody probably here knows. If you are a new person, you've never been to the Pachyderm before, I will buy your first meal. I will invite you to join the Wichita Pachyderm Club. We meet on Fridays at noon. That's tomorrow. On the 9th floor of the Ruffin Building. That's the former Bank of America building. 100 North Broadway at noon. Go in, and if I'm not there, sometimes I run a little late, but I'll pay for your meal when I get there. Just tell the treasurers that you're my guest. KCFL, obviously, we're obviously looking for more help. We always need more volunteers. We need more donors. We have 523 moms that we are supporting either 100% or most of them, the vast majority of them, fractionally. And these moms that save their baby from abortion almost always do it because of financial reasons. About half the abortions that occur in this country could be stopped by just offering to help the mothers. And so if you're not helping through this organization or through another, you should, because, you know, especially when you see a child that has survived an abortion, and, you know, they're so beautiful, and it really is heartwarming
to see when you have some success. Now, not every one of them's a success. Sometimes you get mothers that don't do things right, and might have the kid taken away, or, you know, it doesn't always turn out love and roses. Sometimes it turns out beautifully, though. And in any case, the child should have a right to life just like you and I do. And finally, item L, the next regular KRA meeting is February 28th, not October 25th. So, with that, we are down to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Debbie, do you want to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Debbie is moving that we adjourn the meeting. Do we have a second? Art is seconding the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.